I had always been the good daughter, the one who followed the rules, who did what was expected of her. I knew my place in the family. My father, a strict man with rigid expectations, made sure of that. But life has a way of throwing everything you thought you knew right out the window. I was 18 years old when I first met him. His name was David. He wasn't just any man. He was different. Older, experienced, worldly. There was something magnetic about him, something I had never encountered in my small, sheltered world. It started innocently enough. I was at a friend's gathering, a simple dinner party with the usual crowd. My father had insisted I go, as he often did, thinking it would be good for me to socialize with people my age. But that night, David was there. I don't remember much about the others at the party. I don't remember the conversations, the laughter, the clinking of glasses. All I remember is David. He stood across the room, his presence filling the space without him needing to say a word. His smile was the first thing that caught me. Warm, inviting, but with an edge of something I couldn't quite put my finger on. His deep voice, his steady gaze, they all captivated me in a way I had never experienced before. I wasn't supposed to feel this way. I was just a girl, 18 years old, still living under the protection of my father's rules. But when David spoke to me, it was like everything else in the world fell away. We talked, briefly at first. I was shy, reserved, my usual self, but with him, it was different. He listened when I spoke, like he cared about what I had to say. And the more we talked, the more I found myself drawn to him. But that was impossible, right? I was just a young girl, a girl my father still thought of as a child. And David? He was 35. Too old. Too experienced. He had seen the world, done things I could only dream of. He wasn't someone I was meant to be with. But none of that mattered as we stood there, talking into the night, everything else around us fading away. I knew my father would never approve. He would never accept David. And I knew I couldn't have him. But still, I couldn't stop the way I felt. I couldn't stop the pull toward him. I was falling for him, and I couldn't stop it. The next few weeks were a blur. Every time I saw David, something inside me awakened. The way he looked at me, the way he smiled. I began to look forward to our encounters, whether they were in passing or the brief conversations we managed to steal when no one was looking. It was electric. I found myself thinking about him constantly. It wasn't just physical, it was more than that. There was something about the way he made me feel like I mattered, like I was important, that made everything else in my life seem insignificant. One evening, after yet another encounter, I found myself waiting for him by the park near my house. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. I had told my father I was going to the library to study. But I couldn't concentrate on my schoolwork, not with David on my mind. I stood there under the pale glow of the streetlights, my heart pounding in my chest, waiting. And then I saw him. He was walking toward me, his confident stride steady and sure, just like the first time I saw him. My stomach fluttered. I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know why I was there, standing in the cold night air, just waiting for him. "You came," he said softly, his voice low and warm. "I wasn't sure if you'd actually show up." "I wasn't sure either," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what I'm doing." David smiled, a slow, knowing smile that made my heart skip a beat. "I think you do," he said. "You just have to admit it to yourself." I looked up at him, unsure of what he meant, but I knew he was right. I had to admit it. I was drawn to him. I didn't understand it, but I couldn't deny it anymore. He took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. "Emma," he said, his hand reaching out to gently touch my arm. "You don't have to be afraid of what you're feeling. I've been there too. But sometimes, the heart knows what it wants, even when the head doesn't agree." I swallowed hard, fighting back the emotions threatening to consume me. I had never felt anything like this before. "But you're so different. You're not like the guys I know. You're not even in my world." "I never wanted to be," he said, stepping closer until there was barely any space between us. "I'm not here to fit into your world. I'm here to help you escape it. To show you something more." My breath caught in my throat as he leaned down, his lips brushing against mine. For a second, I hesitated, that small voice of reason in the back of my mind telling me this was wrong. But then I kissed him back, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. Nothing but the feeling of his lips on mine, the heat that surged through me, and the undeniable connection between us. That kiss, that stolen moment, marked the beginning of something I couldn't undo. In that instant, I knew I had crossed a line. I had broken the one rule I swore I would never break. But I didn't care. I didn't care about the consequences, about the danger of falling for someone like David. All I cared about was the way he made me feel. And as I pulled away from him, breathless, I knew one thing for sure. I was in love with him. And nothing was going to stop me from being with him. The days that followed were a blur. My world, once predictable and controlled by my father's expectations, had shifted into something I couldn't recognize. David had awakened something in me, something I didn't even know was there. And now I was caught in it. The thrill, the danger, the forbidden allure of it all. It wasn't just the physical attraction that kept me coming back. It was how he made me feel seen, heard, like I mattered. For the first time, I wasn't just the obedient daughter, the good girl. With him, I was someone else, a woman, not a child. He made me feel powerful in ways I couldn't even explain. But no matter how badly I wanted to believe this was a fairy tale, a happy ending, I knew deep down that I couldn't escape the consequences of loving someone like him. I had spent my life doing what was expected of me, following the rules. But now, I was breaking all the rules. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I cared. Underscore 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 underscore. We met in secret at first. I would tell my father I was going to the library or spending time with friends, and then I'd slip away to meet David. He always found new places for us to meet, quiet spots, hidden places where no one would recognize us. It felt like we were living in a secret world, just the two of us. The thought of being found out made my pulse race with excitement. One evening, we met at an old cafe on the outskirts of town. It was dimly lit, the kind of place where you could sit in the corner and disappear into the shadows. I had never been here before, but it felt oddly comforting, like a refuge from the life I had left behind. David was waiting for me when I arrived, his familiar smile reassuring me. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice smooth and calm as always. I tried to suppress the butterflies in my stomach. "I'm not supposed to be here," I replied, my voice tight with the fear of getting caught. "What if someone sees us?" "No one will," he reassured me, his fingers brushing against mine. "No one ever notices the things they shouldn't." The way he spoke, the way he touched me, it was intoxicating. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just some innocent love affair. It was a dangerous game, and I was playing with fire. The more we saw each other, the more I realized how much my father disapproved of my newfound freedom. He started questioning me more frequently, accusing me of hiding things from him. It was like he could feel that something was off, but he didn't know what. One afternoon, he confronted me. "Where are you going this time, Emma? You've been out every day this week, and I don't believe you're spending all that time studying." I froze, the lie already forming in my mind. "Just with friends," I said, forcing a smile. But my father wasn't fooled. "You're not just with friends, Emma. I can see it in your eyes. You've been sneaking around, haven't you?" I hesitated. How could I explain to him that I had fallen in love with someone he would never approve of? Someone who was older, someone who was not the type of man he wanted for his daughter? "I'm not a child anymore," I finally said, my voice low but firm. "I don't need your permission." His face turned red, the disappointment in his eyes cutting deeper than any anger. "You'll regret this, Emma," he warned. "I know men like him. He'll break your heart. And when he does, you'll have no one to blame but yourself." His words stung, but they only made me more certain of my feelings. I wasn't going to let my father dictate my life. Not anymore. But my defiance came at a cost. As my relationship with David deepened, I began to notice things I hadn't before. Little things, small signs that he wasn't as invested in me as I was in him. At first, it was nothing major. He would cancel plans at the last minute or avoid answering my calls. I told myself it was just a phase, that maybe he was busy, that he had other things to focus on. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. And then, one day, I saw him with her. Her name was Lily. She was beautiful, tall, with striking blonde hair and an effortless elegance about her. They were standing close to each other, laughing. It was a simple gesture, just the two of them enjoying each other's company. But it cut me like a knife. I stood there, hidden behind a pillar, watching them for what felt like an eternity. David had his arm around her waist, his hand resting casually on her hip. It was the way he used to touch me, the way he used to make me feel like I was the only one. But now, it was her. And I was nothing more than an afterthought. I didn't know what to do with the fury that was boiling inside me. I wanted to confront him. I wanted to scream, to make him feel the pain I had felt. But I couldn't. I couldn't let him see how weak I was. So I waited. I waited for the right moment. And then, a few days later, I walked into his apartment unannounced. "Emma?" David's voice was surprised, but not worried. He never thought I would confront him like this. I stood there, my arms crossed, glaring at him. "I saw you with her," I said, my voice shaking with anger. David's face shifted, the calm facade slipping for just a second. "It's not what you think," he began, but I cut him off. "Don't lie to me," I snapped. "You were with her. You're seeing her. You don't get to play me like this." He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, and in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't the only one playing games. He had his own secrets, his own lies, and I was just one of many. "I'm sorry, Emma," he said finally, his voice soft, but empty. "I never wanted to hurt you." But it was too late for apologies. I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I stood there frozen, staring at David. His words felt hollow, empty, like they were coming from someone who didn't even know me anymore. "I'm sorry." That's all he could say? That's all he had for me after everything? I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. I had given him everything, my heart, my trust, and he had thrown it away for someone else. "You think sorry is enough?" I demanded, my voice shaking with rage. "You think that just because you say sorry that I'm going to forgive you?" He flinched. It was the first time I had seen him truly regret something, and I almost felt sorry for him. But not anymore. I wasn't the girl who would let someone walk all over me. "You've been playing me, David," I continued. "All this time. And now you want to pretend like you're the victim." His silence was the answer. He didn't have a response. I turned away, a sense of finality settling in my chest. "I'm done. I hope she's worth it." Leaving David's apartment was like walking out of a nightmare. The air outside felt different, cooler, clearer, as though the weight of everything I had been carrying was finally lifting. But as I stepped onto the sidewalk, I realized something. It wasn't over. Not yet. I wasn't just walking away from him. I was walking away from everything I had believed in. For months, I had been so consumed by the idea of getting revenge, of making him feel the pain I had felt. But now that I had done it, there was nothing left. No satisfaction. No peace. Just an overwhelming emptiness. As I walked down the street, I noticed how everything around me seemed so normal. People walking their dogs, couples laughing, children playing. They had no idea what I had just done. They had no idea what it felt like to love and lose everything in the span of a few minutes. I wasn't sure what hurt more, losing David or realizing that I had become someone I didn't recognize. I had spent so much time planning my revenge, so much time making him pay, that I had lost sight of who I was. And now, I was left with the aftermath. I tried to keep my mind busy, throwing myself into work, into trying to move on. But every time I saw David's name, every time I thought about the betrayal, it all came flooding back. The anger. The betrayal. The hurt. I began to realize that revenge wasn't as sweet as everyone said it would be. It didn't heal the wounds. It didn't give me the satisfaction I was hoping for. In fact, it only deepened the pain. One night, I ran into an old friend, Lily. The same Lily who had been the other woman. The same Lily who had stolen David away from me. We stood there in awkward silence for a moment, neither of us knowing what to say. But finally I spoke. "I never wanted this, you know. I never wanted any of this to happen." She looked at me, and for a moment, I saw the same hurt in her eyes that I felt. "Neither did I," she said softly. "I never meant to hurt you." I nodded, the weight of it all settling on my shoulders. The anger I had felt toward her began to fade. We were both victims in this mess, trapped in a game we didn't know how to play. But still, there was a part of me that felt vindicated. I had exposed him for what he truly was. I had made him pay for what he did to me. And that was something no one could take away. A few weeks passed, and life went on. But it didn't feel the same. I started to question everything, my decisions, my actions, my motives. Was this who I was now? Was I someone who thrived on revenge, who sought to make others suffer to ease my own pain? It was a harsh realization, but it was one I needed to face. The revenge I had gotten, the satisfaction I thought I would feel, it wasn't enough. In the end, it had cost me more than I could have ever imagined. It had cost me my innocence, my self-respect, and my ability to trust. I had torn apart two lives, but in doing so, I had destroyed my own. I realized that I needed to make a choice. I could keep holding onto the past, keep clinging to the anger and bitterness that had consumed me for so long. Or I could let go, move on, and start over. It wasn't easy. The pain of betrayal, of being used, still haunted me. But I knew that I couldn't let it control my life anymore. I couldn't keep letting my anger dictate my decisions. I started small. I reached out to my father, who I hadn't spoken to in months. We met for dinner, and as we sat there, he looked at me with a kind of understanding that I had never expected. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice sincere, "for not seeing what you were going through. I just wanted to protect you." And in that moment, I realized something important. My father wasn't perfect, but he loved me, and that was more than enough. I spent the next few months rebuilding my life. I focused on my career, on reconnecting with the people who mattered. I found peace in places I never thought to look before, in the quiet moments, in the things I had overlooked. And then, one evening, David called me. I hadn't heard from him in weeks. His voice was calm, apologetic, but there was something different about it. Something that made me stop and listen. "I just wanted to say goodbye, Emma," he said. "I know I've hurt you. I've hurt everyone I've ever loved. But I wanted you to know that I'll never forget you." I didn't say anything for a moment. I didn't know how to respond. But finally I spoke. "I hope you find peace, David," I said softly. "I really do." I hung up the phone and sat there, staring at the empty space in front of me. I had finally let go. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. It's strange how life has a way of forcing you to confront your past. Just when I thought I had buried the anger, the resentment, the need for revenge, it came rushing back in unexpected ways. I had done everything I could to move on. I had rebuilt my life. I had found new purpose in my career, in reconnecting with the people who truly cared for me. But no matter how much I tried to fill the emptiness, a small part of me still longed for something I couldn't quite name. I hadn't heard from James or Daniel in weeks. It was as if they had disappeared, just as quickly as they had entered my life. It should have felt like a relief. But for some reason, I felt an unshakable sense of anticipation. Like I was waiting for something to happen, something that would either close the chapter completely or pull me back into the mess I had worked so hard to escape. One day, I found myself standing outside the same cafe where I had met David all those months ago. It felt like another lifetime. The streets seemed quieter, the air cooler, and for the first time in a long time, I wondered if maybe this was where I needed to be. If I was finally ready to face everything I had lost. I didn't expect to see him. And yet, when I walked into the cafe, there he was, David, sitting alone at a table near the back, his face buried in his hands. For a moment, I hesitated. I could walk out, pretend I never saw him. It would be easier that way. But something inside me told me I couldn't leave without facing him, without finishing what had been left undone between us. I took a deep breath and walked toward his table. He didn't notice me at first, lost in thought. But when I stood in front of him, he looked up, his face pale. "Emma," he whispered, his voice filled with surprise. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." I could feel my heart race. It wasn't the anger I thought would come. It wasn't the hatred that had fueled me before. It was something different. Something I couldn't quite name. "You look different," I said, my voice calm but distant. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you," he replied, his eyes filled with regret. "I've been trying to fix my life. Trying to make things right. But nothing feels right anymore." The words stung. They should have. But they didn't. Not the way they would have months ago. I had already made peace with everything he had done to me. The betrayal. The lies. The broken trust. But now I realized it wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. I sat down across from him, staring at him without saying a word. The silence between us was thick, filled with unspoken words, unresolved emotions. For a long time, I had wanted to hear him apologize, to hear him admit that everything he had done was wrong. I had wanted him to suffer, to understand the pain he had caused me. But now, sitting here with him, I realized something. What I had wanted all along wasn't revenge. It was closure. It was healing. And in order to heal, I had to let go. I had to forgive not for him, but for myself. "I've forgiven you," I said, the words leaving my mouth before I could stop them. David's eyes widened. "What?" He looked genuinely confused, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. You've forgiven me?" "I have," I said quietly. "I can't keep carrying this anger. It's not worth it. It's not worth me anymore." I could see the weight lift off his shoulders as if my words had finally given him the release he needed. His eyes softened, and for the first time since I had met him, he didn't look like the man who had manipulated me. He looked like a man who was truly sorry. "I don't deserve it," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "But thank you. I'll never forget what I did to you." I nodded, standing up to leave. "You don't have to. But you have to let go of it, just like I have." I walked out of the cafe, feeling something shift inside me. The weight of the past, the anger, the hurt, it all started to fade. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Free from him. Free from the revenge. And free from myself. In the weeks that followed, I focused on moving forward. The path wasn't always easy, but it was mine to walk. I kept my distance from the past, choosing to build something new for myself. I invested in my career, worked on my relationships with friends and family, and found peace in small moments. The more I let go, the lighter I felt. I stopped obsessing over the past. I stopped looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next betrayal or the next piece of drama. I realized that revenge wasn't the path to healing. It wasn't the path to happiness. Forgiveness was. I had learned the hardest lesson of all, that holding on to pain only kept me chained to the people who had hurt me. And when I finally let go of that pain, I finally found the freedom I had been searching for. I never saw David again after that day at the cafe. He had left the town, moved on with his life, just as I had moved on with mine. We were both part of each other's past now. And that was okay. Because for the first time, I understood that letting go wasn't just about forgiving someone else. It was about forgiving yourself. It's funny how time has a way of softening everything. The sharp pain of betrayal, the heat of anger, the need for revenge, they all started to fade. But what I didn't expect was the way it would leave behind echoes, little reminders that refused to let you forget. Even after all the time that had passed, I still couldn't shake the feeling of unease whenever I saw a man who resembled David, or when I walked into a cafe and felt that same rush of old memories. But it was different now. The bitterness had been replaced with something more manageable. Regret, perhaps. And a lesson I had learned too late. I had forgiven, yes. But that didn't mean everything was okay. It didn't mean that the pieces of my life that had been shattered could simply be swept away. There were things I couldn't fix, relationships with people who were long gone, dreams that would never come true. And then there was my father. We had started speaking again slowly. The distance between us, built over months of anger and disappointment, was starting to close. He had seen the changes in me, in the way I carried myself. But I still felt the weight of everything that had happened between us, especially the day I had walked away from his love in favor of a man who had never deserved it. It wasn't just about David anymore. It wasn't just about the affair or the lies. It was about the trust that had been broken between me and the one person who had always been there for me, my father. My father's world had always been black and white. There was right and there was wrong. And I had chosen the wrong side. But I had spent enough time hating myself. And hating him. My father had tried to protect me. I knew that now. I had been blinded by a love that wasn't even real. And in the process, I had destroyed everything that mattered. I remember the first real conversation we had after everything had fallen apart. It wasn't dramatic. There were no grand apologies or dramatic speeches. It was simple. Honest. I was wrong, I said, sitting across from him at the kitchen table, the familiar warmth of home wrapping around me like a blanket. I didn't listen to you. I should have. You were right about him. And I hurt you. He didn't say anything at first. Just looked at me, his face softening. You always were stubborn, he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. But you're my daughter, Emma. And I'll always love you. Even when you make mistakes. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation. There was still so much left unsaid, so many things that needed to be mended. But it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't alone. Despite everything I had done, everything I had learned, the shadows of my past still lingered. I thought the past was behind me. I thought I had let go. But every so often, it crept back into my mind, like a thief in the night, reminding me that I wasn't as free as I wanted to be. David's betrayal had shaken me to my core. But even as I rebuilt my life, even as I learned to forgive, I could still feel the weight of those memories, like a dark cloud that followed me everywhere I went. It wasn't about him anymore. It wasn't even about my revenge. It was about the way he had made me feel, small, insignificant, disposable. And no matter how much I tried to push it away, that feeling of worthlessness kept creeping back in. I had changed. I was no longer the girl I used to be, the naive girl who believed in fairy tale endings, the girl who thought love could solve everything. I had learned the hard way that love wasn't enough when trust was broken. But even now, after everything, I couldn't help but wonder, was I really better off without him? It was a few weeks later when I received a text message that stopped me in my tracks. The name that appeared on my screen made my heart skip a beat. Daniel. I hadn't heard from him since the day he walked out of my life. I thought I'd never see him again. But here he was, reaching out from the past. I almost didn't open the message. But curiosity, that insidious thing, got the better of me. I need to see you, it read. There's something you need to know. I stared at the message, my pulse racing. What could he possibly have to say to me? Why after all this time would he want to reach out? I thought about ignoring it. I thought about deleting it, erasing him from my life for good. But something inside me said no. I needed to know. I needed to understand. So, I replied. When? I met Daniel at the same cafe we had spent so many hours in. It was strange, sitting there across from him after all the time that had passed. He looked older, more worn out. His usual charm was gone, replaced by an air of exhaustion, as though life had finally caught up with him. I didn't think you'd come, he said, his voice quiet. I didn't think I would either, I replied. But you wanted to tell me something. What is it? Daniel hesitated before speaking. I've been carrying a secret, he said. Something I should have told you before. Something that would have changed everything. I could feel the tension in the air, thick with anticipation. He paused again, like he was waiting for the right words to come to him. You weren't the only one who was hurt, he finally said. James. He wasn't just cheating on you with Lily. There was more. I tried to protect you from the truth, but now I realize I was wrong. My heart pounded in my chest. What do you mean? James was involved in something much darker, Daniel said, his voice shaking. There were people who were using him. People who were using both of us. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. What was he talking about? What had James done? Daniel's words echoed in my mind, each one more unsettling than the last. People who were using him. People who were using both of us. My head was spinning, and all I could do was stare at him, trying to make sense of what he was telling me. This was no longer just about love and betrayal. It was about something much darker, something I wasn't prepared for. What are you talking about, Daniel? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. What do you mean by using us? Daniel took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair as he stared out the window. There's a network of people, powerful people, that James got involved with. People who deal with things that are better left unsaid. I didn't know the full extent of it when I first met him. I didn't know what he was into. But I found out. And I tried to stop it. I tried to protect you from the truth. I felt my stomach churn. The man I had loved, the man I thought I had known, was involved in something dangerous. Something criminal. James was involved in more than just the affair, Daniel continued, his voice filled with regret. He was being blackmailed. And worse, he was helping these people cover their tracks. He used you, Emma, just like they used him. And I didn't know how to warn you. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, the anger creeping into my voice. Why wait until now? I was trying to protect you, Daniel replied, his eyes meeting mine. But the truth is, I didn't know how deep it went. I didn't want to drag you into something that could destroy us both. I sat back in my chair, processing what he had just told me. James wasn't just some man who had betrayed me. He was part of something far bigger, far more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. I thought I had been hurt by his lies, but this was something else entirely. As I sat there, staring at Daniel, I realized something. This wasn't just about love anymore. It wasn't even about revenge. This was about survival. James had dragged me into something I couldn't escape, something that could ruin not just my life, but the lives of everyone I cared about. I have to do something, I said, my voice trembling with the weight of what I knew I had to do. What are you going to do? Daniel asked, his voice cautious. I'm going to find out the truth. All of it. I'm going to expose them, I said, my voice steady now. The anger, the confusion, it was all gone. I didn't have time to feel sorry for myself. I had to protect myself. I had to protect my family. You don't know what you're getting into, Emma, Daniel warned, his eyes wide with concern. This is dangerous. These people are ruthless. They'll stop at nothing to protect their secrets. I don't care, I replied, standing up. They've already taken everything from me. I'm not going to sit back and let them destroy everything I have left. I'm going to make them pay. Daniel's face hardened, and for a moment, I thought he might try to stop me. But instead, he just nodded, the defeat in his eyes palpable. I'll help you, he said. I don't know what I can do, but if you're going down this road, I'll be there. The next few days were a blur. I was consumed with finding out everything I could about the people James was involved with. I couldn't let this go. I had to know the full truth. I started with the basics, James's business, his contacts, the people he had worked with. It didn't take long for me to realize that there were things I hadn't seen, things he had kept from me. He had been living a double life, and I had been nothing more than a pawn in his game. The more I dug, the more I uncovered. There were phone records, bank transactions, emails, everything pointed to a network of people involved in something criminal. Drugs. Money laundering. It was all right there, staring me in the face. But the deeper I went, the more dangerous it became. I could feel their presence, like they were watching me, waiting for me to slip up. And then, one night, I received a message. It was from an unknown number. The message was simple, but it chilled me to the bone. Stop digging, or you'll regret it. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity. My heart raced as I realized what I was up against. This wasn't just about getting revenge on James anymore. This was about my life. And if I wasn't careful, everything I had worked for, everything I had tried to rebuild, could be taken from me in an instant. I showed the message to Daniel, and he looked at it, his face pale. They're watching you, Emma. This is serious. I'm not stopping, I said, my voice shaking. I have to know the truth. I have to make sure they don't get away with this. Daniel didn't argue. He couldn't. We both knew that once I started down this path, there was no turning back. I had waited for this moment for months, planning every step, memorizing every routine. Every careless move my father and James had made had led me here. I knew their weaknesses, their secrets, the tiny cracks in their armor that no one else could see. Tonight, I would exploit every single one. The office building was nearly empty. Security was lax, distracted by a minor fire alarm earlier in the evening. Perfect. I slipped inside, my heels silent on the polished marble floor, my bag loaded with everything I needed, Files, a flash drive, cameras, and, most importantly, patience. I could hear James' voice echoing from the executive suite. He was gloating over the phone, bragging about his plans, the acquisitions, the deals, the control he still held. He had no idea that I was standing just outside the door, listening to every word. Every brag, every confident laugh, it was fuel to my fire. I crouched behind a potted plant, my breath steady. The adrenaline was sharp, alive, and it sharpened my focus. This wasn't fear anymore, it was power. I had become invisible to them, a shadow in plain sight. I triggered the hidden camera in the hallway, sending the live feed to my laptop. Every entrance, every exit, every movement recorded. I could see James pacing, the arrogance radiating off him like heat. My father appeared on the screen next, impatient, irritated, unaware that his empire was about to collapse around him. I sent a subtle alert to one of the external contacts I had cultivated, someone loyal, someone who hated James almost as much as I did. Within minutes, an email began circulating inside the company, exposing financial misconduct, secret offshore accounts, and illegal contracts. I watched as the first tremors of panic spread across the office. Employees whispered, glanced at each other nervously, their trust cracking. James noticed the subtle shift immediately, frowning. He called a meeting, his voice tense, forcing a sense of control he no longer had. I had already placed the files where they could not be destroyed. Copies were hidden, encrypted, scattered across multiple platforms. Even if James tried to delete them, it was too late. The evidence was out there, unstoppable, and it would not only ruin him but also expose my father's complicity. I entered the suite quietly. My father looked up, startled. "Emma," he said, disbelief etched into every line of his face. "What are you doing here?" I stepped closer, my voice calm but cold. "I'm ending this. Tonight." James appeared from the corner, his face twisting with rage and confusion. "You think you can take us down? You're alone. You have nothing." I smiled faintly. "Alone? Not anymore. You've already lost." I didn't give them time to react. With a few keystrokes, I activated the system I had planted earlier, microphones, hidden cameras, everything broadcasting live to authorities and the press. Every word, every move they made, every attempt to cover up, the world would see it all. James lunged at me. I sidestepped, my movements precise, practiced. The files were safe. The evidence was already in motion, unstoppable. My father froze, realizing too late that his empire, his control, was slipping through his fingers. The tension in the room was suffocating. Every second felt like a lifetime. I could feel their panic, their desperation, but I was steady, focused. This was the culmination of every sleepless night, every plan, every risk I had taken. I didn't just want revenge, I wanted them to understand the magnitude of their failures, the depth of their betrayal. The shock in their eyes when they realized that everything they had built, everything they had controlled, was crumbling in real time, that was mine to savor. I leaned in close, my voice barely a whisper. "You wanted to control me. You wanted to break me. Now you will watch everything you built collapse. And there's nothing you can do to stop it." Their panic reached a fever pitch. My father's hands shook, James' face reddened with fury, but neither could move fast enough. I had orchestrated every detail. I had outsmarted them. I stepped back, observing the chaos, my pulse steady. This wasn't the end yet, but it was close. One more move, one final step, and everything would be over. My revenge was almost complete. I glanced at the clock. Midnight was approaching. Everything I had done, all the risks I had taken, all the secrets I had uncovered, it all came down to the next hour. And I was ready. I had become the storm they never saw coming. And soon, they would pay for every lie, every betrayal, every attempt to control me. The hours before midnight felt like days. I stood in the heart of the storm I had created, watching the devastation unfold before me. My father and James were not just losing their grip on power, they were losing everything they had worked for. And I, the girl they had tried to break, was now the one holding all the cards. I watched them both, their eyes darting around the room, desperate to find a way out. My father, the man who had spent years controlling every aspect of my life, stood there helpless. James, the man who had betrayed me in the most brutal way, looked at me with a mixture of rage and disbelief. They thought they were invincible. They thought they could outsmart me. But they couldn't. I had thought about this moment for so long, rehearsed it in my head 1,000 times. But nothing could have prepared me for how satisfying it felt to watch them squirm. I stepped forward slowly, making sure my movements were deliberate. "You had everything," I said quietly, my voice carrying through the room. "The power, the control, the lives of everyone who trusted you. But none of that matters anymore." James tried to regain his composure, but the panic was evident in his eyes. "You don't understand, Emma. This isn't just about you. This is about survival. This is bigger than you think." I smiled, but it wasn't a smile of triumph. It was the smile of someone who had seen through all the lies. "No, James," I said, my voice cold and calculated. "It's about what happens when you destroy the people who trusted you. You lose everything. You lose yourself." He moved towards me, his fists clenched, but I didn't flinch. I had seen his anger before. It didn't scare me anymore. "I'll make you regret this," he spat. "I'll make sure you never get away with this." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The consequences of his actions were already in motion, and nothing he said could change that now. I turned to my father, who was standing near the window, his back to me. "You knew," I said quietly. "You knew all along, didn't you? You knew who James was, what he was doing. And you let it happen." He didn't answer right away. The silence between us was deafening. Finally, he spoke, his voice thick with regret. "I thought I could protect you. I thought I could shield you from the truth. But I was wrong." I shook my head, my anger rising again. "You didn't protect me. You kept me in the dark, just like James did. You let him manipulate me. You let him ruin everything." "Emma, please," he began, his voice breaking. "No," I interrupted, my voice sharp. "Don't ask for my forgiveness. You don't get to be forgiven after everything you've done." I walked towards the desk, where I had placed the final piece of my plan, a video recording of everything, James's illegal dealings, my father's complicity, the lives they had ruined. The file was set to automatically upload to the authorities the moment the clock struck midnight. "I'm done with you," I said, my back to them. "This ends now." As the clock ticked closer to midnight, the weight of everything I had done settled over me. The revenge, the lies, the manipulation, it had all come down to this moment. The final, irreversible decision. I could feel my pulse quicken as I stared at the screen, waiting for the upload to complete. One click and everything would be out there. Their empire, their secrets, their lies, all of it would come crashing down. Behind me, I heard James's voice again, filled with desperation. "You don't have to do this. You don't understand what you're doing. This will ruin you too. You'll be a target for the rest of your life." I turned to face him, my face a mask of determination. "I've already been a target for too long," I said coldly. "And now I'm taking control. This isn't just about you. It's about everyone you've hurt, everyone you've used." James's eyes widened as the screen in front of me blinked. The upload was complete. The information was out. It was done. The room went silent. The tension was palpable, the air thick with the reality of what had just happened. The authorities were already on their way, but the damage had already been done. James's world, my father's world, was crumbling around them. The empire they had built with lies, deceit, and manipulation was falling apart. I watched them as they realized what I had done. Their faces, once filled with arrogance and confidence, were now filled with terror. There was no escape for them now. James turned to my father, his voice frantic. "This is your fault," he hissed. "You brought her into this." My father, for the first time, looked truly defeated. "I didn't want this for her. I didn't want this for either of us," he said, his voice hollow. "But it's too late now. There's nothing we can do." And in that moment, I realized something that had been growing inside me for months. The anger I had carried, the need for revenge, had consumed me. But now, standing there in the aftermath of it all, I felt nothing. Nothing but a strange, empty sense of relief. The sirens began wailing in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. I knew what was coming. I had set it in motion, and now there was no turning back. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't care. I turned away from James and my father, the weight of the years lifting off my shoulders. It was over. I had won. But I had lost something too. The girl who walked into this mess, the girl who believed in love and trust and loyalty, was gone. In her place stood a woman who had learned the hard way that revenge doesn't heal the heart. It only leaves scars. Scars that never fully heal. But now, as I walked out the door, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had taken everything from them that they had taken from me. I had reclaimed my life. And now, for the first time, I could walk away.